Hello guys, welcome back to another video. We're going to be working on the BMW 760 Ally today. But before we get into the video, make sure you hit that like button. It really does help me out and it is greatly appreciated. Now then, what in particular are we going to be doing today? So we're going to be tackling the infamous alternator bracket seal. So if you have an N62 or N73 engine, that is the V8 or V12 engine, this is a very, very common problem. You'll notice that you have quite a severe oil leak in my case, in particular, but you may just have a small trickle of oil. You'll notice it on the underside engine pan, and you may also notice it running down the power steering pump onto your anti-roll bar as well. Now, if you want to take your car to a dealership or to a garage to get this job done, you are talking a lot of money because there is a lot of labor involved just to replace this part. Now, the seal itself, the gasket itself, is very, very cheap. Only go genuine BMW, it's like £3 or £4, so not expensive to buy the seal, but like I said, the money is in the labor. Now, there is a couple more things that I would recommend replacing at the same time. So there is this pipe just here, again, not expensive. This goes from the water pump to the alternator bracket, I believe. We have 4 O-rings in here. These are for the oil cooler lines. I'm not too sure if I'm going to need all of these, depending on which oil cooler lines we remove. But then we have 2 main O-rings in here. This is for where the oil cooler thermostat bolts into the alternator bracket. Now, if you're watching this and you don't own an N62 or N73 engine, essentially the alternator is water cooled. So the alternator itself has to sit in a bracket, and obviously that contains coolant, and yeah, it's a bit different to your regular air-cooled alternator. So I guess that comes with a lot of different problems. Now, I will be also refurbishing the alternator. That'll probably be in a separate video though. I did plan on just replacing it, but I found out there was over £1,000, so yeah, I didn't fancy replacing the alternator when mine seems fine, but I am going to be, refurbishing it and replacing, a bunch of components in it. So yeah, a lot to get done today, so I think we'll just get outside and let's get cracking. Okay then, let's begin. So you're probably wondering first and foremost, why has the front end of the car been completely removed? Now, believe it or not, I'm actually in the process of doing a full facelift conversion on this car. I just have the bumper left to remove, but I have also removed a couple other parts as well. So I've completely removed both of the engine airboxes. Now that is good because it means we have good access to the alternator bracket itself, which is just here. And so it makes sense to do this job while I have all this out of the way. Now, it's not completely necessary to remove the airboxes, but like I said, it does make it a slightly easier job to do. Now, I have also went ahead and removed the front engine cover and also the clutch fan as well. As you can see, they're just there to the side. Now, I would recommend at least removing the clutch fan because we need to get onto the automatic tensioner to release the drive belt. Obviously, we need to take it off of the alternator pulley, and then we can get cracking with the alternator bracket itself. Oh, I have already also removed the wheel arch liners. Now, you can take the wheel off if you want, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. I actually just removed this air duct here for the brakes, and as you can see, again, we can see the alternator bracket up there. So I think we should have pretty good access at this point. So of course the alternator bracket itself is completely filled with coolant, and we have a load of coolant lines going from it. So first thing you want to do is completely drain the coolant. So there is just a drain plug on this side. You just need to put a flat bladed screwdriver in it, turn it anti-clockwise, and then the coolant should drain out. Just release the cap off the coolant reservoir just to help it drain a little bit easier. But once that has completely drained, we can then get cracking. Okay then, so we are going to remove the drive belt now, and you're going to want a T60 socket. You insert it onto the slot on the automatic tensioner, just there, rotate it clockwise, and then we can slip the drive belt off then. Now, if you are doing this job yourself and you have not already done so, I would recommend replacing the drive belt and the pulleys at the same time. Drive belt, automatic tensioner and the idler pulleys at the same time, as well as the AC belt and AC tensioner. It's worth doing. I have not long just replaced all them though, so I will just be obviously reusing the belt. I'm just going to slip it off of the alternator pulley. There we are. No need to remove it fully, just going to leave it kind of in place, but we should have good access to the alternator bracket now. So I think the easiest way to access the alternator bracket is from underneath the car, but obviously we have the power steering pump in the way. Now I think it's held in by about 4 bolts, so we have one here for this bracket, one there, one just above it, although that kind of looks like a nut, and then another nut on the back, I believe. I think that looks about it. So yeah, I'm going to remove those bolts, try and swing the pump out of the way and give us as much access as possible. Now I may need to drain the power steering fluid because I may have to disconnect the lines depending on how much access we have, but yeah, let's try and get this unbolted and see where we're at. Okay, so they swing quite far out of the way. Okay, let's see how far this swings out the way. Oh. Okay. Let's take the belt off. I think that's actually probably enough room, to be fair. I think what's restricting it to go even further is the hose that goes up to the reservoir, which I could unbolt the reservoir just to give us a little bit more room, I suppose. So yeah, I think I'll do that. Yeah, so as you can see, I just unbolted the reservoir from its bracket there. That just gave us that extra little bit of room. Should definitely be able to get the alternator bracket out now. Okay, so I can see 4 main bolts that hold the alternator bracket to the engine. So one there, one there, one there, and then one actually just above it. But I think I'm going to have to remove the automatic tensioner. I could get on it with a wrench, but I'd rather put a socket on it. I don't want to round these bolts. So yeah, I think we're going to remove the automatic tensioner. It's just held in by 1 bolt, and yeah, once that is out of the way, we should be able to remove all 4 bolts then. And then we also need to remove the oil thermostat, which is this thing here, which I think is only held in by 2 torque screws. So they shouldn't be too difficult to remove as long as we have good access to them. Okay, so as you can see, the automatic tensioner is now removed. It's just held in by 1 16mm bolt. Also removed 2 of the alternator bracket bolts. Okay, so those 2 bolts are the alternator bracket bolts, the 2 bolts at the front. Now if you have a look down here, you see that bolt there? That looks like another bracket for the power steering lines. That just looks like a 10mm bolt, so I'm going to remove that. These should swing out the way. Then it should just be the 2 bolts at the bottom, and then the oil cooler thermostat left, and that should be it. Then the alternator bracket should come out then, hopefully. Oh, I guess we've still got to disconnect all the coolant pipes as well, but yeah, that shouldn't be too difficult, hopefully. So while I'm up here, I may as well disconnect the coolant hoses and the electrical connectors first off the alternator. So there is a plug to disconnect, then there is the main power cable that goes to it. It's got to be unhooked Okay, so coolant hose disconnected, power cable disconnected, and the electrical connector that has been disconnected as well. I'm pretty sure that is everything for the top part of the alternator bracket. I think there's just, like I said, 2 bolts that bolt the bracket to the engine block, and then that oil cooler thermostat to unscrew as well. Yeah, that's the bolt removed for the cooler lines. I imagine these would be pretty wedged in there after never ever being removed. Just I'm not too sure if we're going to have oil dripping down once we pull them out. Guess there's anyway one way to find out. Yeah, we are. Cack. Now the thermostat itself should come out, which it has. And there's that there. Okay, now I have a feeling this is going to be pretty heavy, because obviously we have the alternator bracket itself, the alternator, which I think is pretty damn heavy, and we have this little idler pulley, which yeah, adds a couple more grams, but yeah, I guess we should try and pry it away from the engine. So as we can see, the alternator bracket is now removed, complete with the alternator and this little idler pulley here. I'm going to disassemble everything, get the old gasket removed, then I think a good cleanup is in order, because we have made a real mess under here. Okay, so as you can see, I have fully stripped down this alternator bracket, gave it a good clean, removed the original seal, which this is it here. It's literally like plastic now. It's so brittle. It's you know, probably not far from cracking, so yeah, definitely needs replacing. Also removed this coolant hose, which like I said I do have a replacement for, and gave the oil cooler thermostat a good clean out as well. So obviously that can go on with all new O-rings. And then of course I do plan on refurbishing this alternator. Like I said, that'll be in a separate video. So once that's done, that can go back in here, and then we can obviously reinstall everything back onto the car. Okay, so it is actually a couple of days later now. I was waiting on a couple of parts for the alternator refurbishment. That is all done now, as you can see, looking nice and fresh. I have also replaced the O-rings on the oil cooler thermostat. As you can see, I have replaced the gasket already on the alternator bracket. I've also replaced that pipe there as well. Just need to reinstall the idler pulley, the oil cooler thermostat, and the alternator itself, and all this can go back on the car then. Okay, so here is how we are now looking. As you can see, the alternator bracket is now in place. I've also reinstalled that oil cooler thermostat as well. Just need to reconnect the oil cooler lines to that, then reinstall the automatic tensioner, and then a couple of hoses at the top as well. And I think once I've done that, I'm going to fire the engine up without the belt connected, just to make sure that we don't have any leaks. Okay, so of course we have new O-rings for the oil cooler lines. Also purchased a new bracket for the oil cooler lines as well, because yeah, this is kind of what happened to the old one. It's 20-year-old brittle plastic, so that needed replacing. But yeah, automatic tensioner, this bracket here, which the oil cooler lines sit on top of. It's all going to go back on, and then we can get this engine fired up, and hopefully no more leaks. Okay then, so oil cooler lines back in place. I've reinstalled that bracket with the new holder and new bolt as well. Everything has been torqued down. As we can see, I've also reinstalled the automatic tensioner as well. Now, the initial plan was to start the engine with the belt removed, but thinking about it, that's probably not the best idea, because the alternator is water cooled. it's probably best not to, you know, leave that dry, because there's a chance that it can overheat. So obviously we need the water pump to be spinning. So yeah, I am going to put the belt back on, which means reinstalling the power steering pump. It's not a biggie, it's literally just 2 nuts and a bolt that can go back into place, and then yeah, we can get the belt back on and fire this engine up. Okay, so I think we are there. I think we are ready to fire this engine up now. I've reinstalled the drive belt, I've topped up with coolant, I've topped up with oil, so yeah, I guess here goes nothing. Well, that was a fairly uneventful startup. Started straight up and it sounds perfect, sounds so smooth, just as a V12 engine should. And I cannot see any leaks, which is good. I'm just going to leave the cap off of the coolant reservoir. We do obviously need to bleed the air out of the cooling system, but while I wait for that to happen, we're looking good. Okay then guys, so there we go. The BMW 760 Ally should be oil leak free now. I don't want to say, you know, this is a simple walk in the park, easy job to do, because it's definitely not. If anything, it's very awkward, and you will find yourself working in a tight space. So if you are planning on doing this job yourself, then do bear that in mind. But with that being said, it's definitely something that you can do from home. If you are watching this as kind of a guide to the N62, I mean, the N62 and the N73 engines are very, very similar, but there is a few differences. So if you do have the N62, which is the V8 engine, then I believe you will have to remove the engine mount bracket. So yeah, slightly different procedure. You will have to get, you know, kind of a hoist or a crane to hold up the engine while obviously you remove that bracket. But yeah, pretty much after that it's the exact same process. So yeah, if you are planning on doing this yourself, take your time. You are going to need a lot of patience, and yeah, just like I said, just take your time. Replace all of the gaskets and O-rings that you come across. This is not something you want to do more than once. Believe me, it's taken me, I mean, I've done this over a couple of days. I have been kind of doing a couple of the jobs at the same time as well. But yeah, if you was to take your car to a garage or the dealership to have this work done, you're looking over £1,000, I would have thought, just from the sheer amount of labour that's involved. I mean, the seals, the gaskets, the O-rings, you know, you're talking probably, I don't know, £20 to £30 all in. But yeah, like I said, the money is in the labour. So yeah, I'm just glad that it's done now, to be honest. As always, I want to thank all of you guys for watching. Please give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace!